there's no work involved with getting money from the state.
Okay.
Can you explain that?
Sure. So this particular program is called, and we can talk anytime after too, if you want more details. This is called the Watershed Resource Restoration Sponsorship Program, WRSP. It's the Ohio EPA. And every year they solicit projects, and everyone in the state of Ohio, most of the park districts, many of the other conservation organizations put in, many townships, many cities are eligible for this money, big pot of money. But it's for infrastructure projects, but then that is used, the money from that is saved on low interest loans like to the sewer district in Cleveland. They actually turn around and give us the money. It's kind of a complicated process, but what ends up happening is we get a bunch of money for doing restoration work, cleaning up the waterways in Ohio. And part of it was this past year, and it takes years to develop these ideas, and so like we just got done with one at Beaver Creek and that feeds Bass Lake.
Yes.
I started working on that in like 2016. And just finished.
Five years.
Of work. And we put in multiple times for it. We put in once, they didn't like some of the ideas. They said, hey, Paul, how about you try this idea? Let's switch your thoughts, and then working with the planning department, and it's years of work. But in this particular one that we're talking about right now, yeah, I mean, we started this one 2 years ago. I put in for it once already last year, the brook trout project again, and I said, hey, we don't like this. How about you need to gather more information on the streams. We want more data. So I had to go out for a time, gather more data on the streams that are going to actually work. Is this project going to, so, $1.1 million is not much to sneeze at, so they want to make sure it's going to work, go to a good project. So it does take time. And no, I mean, it's very competitive.
We're never guaranteed.
No, that's the only thing, that's the only hard part about doing it. I mean, and it's been nice that John's allowed us to do these things too, and you guys, I mean, it's, to be able to put a little bit of time and effort into it, you're never guaranteed these things, but we've been pretty darn lucky.
Yes, you have.
We've got some great species.
You've done a fantastic job.
We've got this brook trout, I mean, it's to hang put a feather in our cap is, I mean, that's one of the most unique things. So Cleveland's having a talk, I will say this real quick, Cleveland's having a conservation research symposium in the springtime in Cleveland, and they asked us to come give a talk on brook trout. So, this is, I give them talks in Columbus on our brook trout, and people all over the state really do know about this fish right here in our county. So anyway, that's a whole other thing. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the future.
Great. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
Take care.
St. Paul mentioned the grant. I just wanted to mention, I was going to mention it during commissioner's time, but one of the things that the EPA would like us to do is to return the mineral rights to Jogga Park District. So we did a mineral rights search on Veterans Legacy Woods Park, and we've discovered through long search of titles and chains and mineral rights that there is a mineral rights held by a third party. The well is not on park property, but it is a huge, what's called a drilling unit that extends 476 acres and extends under our property. So I'm working with counsel Dale Markowitz, who we typically work with over at Thrasher, Dinsmore, Dolan on our real estate issues. That's in his wheelhouse, and we'll be meeting with EPA, doing our best to dissolve those mineral rights. Dale seems to think because the well, even though it is not on park property, is not producing, and he's been able to track down the owners of these mineral rights, that we can absolve it for a reasonable amount of money in comparison to what we stand to gain from this grant. So I will continue to work with Dale, and we will report back to you and hopefully return those mineral rights back to Jogga Park District on those 200
Is
acres.
it a gas well?
Gas and oil well. It produces no oil, and as I recall, minimal amount of gas, if any at all. So
Great.
So it's always fun to look at those little title searches that extend back to the late 1800s. But we did discovered one that still exists with these owners, so we continue to work on that and get it absolved for Ohio EPA, so we can take advantage of this grant. Thank you, Paul. Paul and his team do a wonderful job. We've got some great natural resources in this county. You all know that. We've got some great species. I've been fortunate enough to tromp around some of those wetlands and see those orchids in my time in the Natural Resource Management Department. And we're truly blessed in this county to have some of the things that we have. So thank you, Paul. Thank you for the presentation. All right, any questions from the commissioners for Paul? Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here. And we just set up another quarter out for next topic of interest, and there are plenty of them, that's for sure. All right, moving on. We have a piece of property, and actually Erwin Leffel is here. Erwin is one of our Thompson Township trustees, so he expressed interest in being here. I provided you with a map, but this is an older ortho photo showing the location just north of Thompson Square and the location of the new Thompson Library. So Erwin contacted me, probably a couple months ago now, and asked that I come up and look at a small pocket portion that might be Jogga Park District's first little park in Thompson Township. So I'm going to put this before you. We don't need to make a decision on it today, but I wanted to hear from Erwin. It's a very, very small piece of property, maybe a quarter to half acre in size. But one of the advantages to the property is, although the property to the right is not held as public land, the property to the northeast is held by the Thompson Township Park District and is actually part of what might be considered the north part of Thompson Ledges. So, Erwin, I'll let you say a few
First,
things.
I want to say one thing to Paul, and attest to what Paul said about the grants, all right? I was in education, did grant writing, did competitive grants, is what he's talking about. There's a lot of work to it. Sometimes you don't come in first. You do all that work, and you don't get it. Now I've been involved with some of the township, there are entitlement grants, that you are entitled to it, but there still is a lot of work and research that you have to do. And the general public does not understand. They come up with, you can use grant, you can get grants, but they don't understand the amount of work that is put into those. And then you have the possibility that you do not get the grant anyway. So I just want to say, the job that he does with grants, it's not easy. It's not easy. This particular project that I'm talking about was a concept that my wife came up with in 18, all right? And basically, she had I don't know if I gave this to you, John. This is an outline of what she came up with, all right? And my wife was a visionary, and she would see a vision, and she would say, we have to do this, and I was left to do it, but with her help. But unfortunately, she would be here today, but in 2019, cancer took my wife away from me. At that point, we were married 46 and a half years. I look young, but I'm actually 72 years old, all right? I don't know, do you have this? Do you have this map?
I think I have copies. I think I have one copy.
This project is really in two parts. What it does is, it brings the Park District's mission to Thompson Township, the people of that part of the county. The park is not there. You need to be there. And this, as John said, is just a little, it wouldn't be a footprint. It's more or less a toe print, all right, in a sense, because it's a small piece of property. And when you look at the map, you will see a rectangle that is there in green, and that's the piece of property that I'm speaking of. That piece of property actually was part of the property that Thompson Township transferred to the Geauga Public Library to build their building. They originally were going to build it on that